And I thought that, as a cardiologist, what can I contribute to this particular aspect of healthcare delivery and insurance, which I think is very important. I'm sure you all are aware that these days in the newspaper there are a lot of controversy that anybody who goes to a hospital with a chest pain is asked for an angiogram, and if anybody goes for an angiogram, at least a stent is put in, if not bypass surgery. So is there any way in which this could be checked, short of auditing and arresting some people and taking away the records? It's a very unpleasant way of doing it. So I'm going to talk about basically a new method which is very simple, and I'm sure that it's so simple to understand that all of you will be able to understand it, which should be a part of our cardiac cath lab. And I would also go up to the extent of saying that unless you have that in that particular hospital, especially in those patients where you're using multiple stents, that hospital should be, told to have it. Otherwise, wait for the decision till the time angiogram goes to a panel, not reimbursed. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me with this august audience. Now we know that coronary artery disease and ischemic heart disease or cardiovascular disease as a cause of death is a very, very challenging thing. And as you would see that in many other parts of the world, the global burden and this being as a cause of mortality is decreasing, although modestly. Like you see North America, from 44.6% of all the deaths being cardiovascular is supposed to be coming down to about 42%, at least 2% total decline, which is a big decline in numbers. Similarly in Europe, Western Europe is coming down from 55% to 53%. But unfortunately in our country, it is projected that from 23% of the deaths being from heart attacks and related illnesses is going to increase by 10% by 2020, which is very alarming. And the solution to this cannot come from a cath lab. Solution from this has to come from lots of things, lot of measures at the level of healthcare, primary healthcare, people becoming aware of their hypertension, people becoming aware of their diabetes and treating it. But then some of the things which I'll be speaking about also will contribute to this. The other problem which this region has is diabetes, and diabetes, as you know, is a very important precursor of heart disease, vascular disease. There again you would see globally diabetes is increasing everywhere. If you see in North America, the projection was that by 2010 there would be a 35% increase. Similarly in Europe about 50% increase. In Africa 93% increase, whereas in India it is 111% increase. This is not projected, but it's already happened. That in the last 15 years we have seen a 111% increase in the incidence of new cases of diabetes as compared to only 35% in United States. Increases all over. So all this makes our job very, very challenging. We know that we have the largest number of people dying because of heart attacks and related illnesses in the world. WHO estimates that we will have the highest number of patients with heart attacks in years to come. We already are the diabetic capital of the world. Maximum number of patients with diabetes in numbers you will find in India. China is contesting that. They say that we have more, but still we're lucky. We are at least on the top of them, at least in diseases. And ischemic heart disease is responsible for about 33% of deaths in India. Other thing is that, which is very relevant, is that in our population, heart disease occurs at least 10 years earlier than in Western world. 40% of our patients are less than 40 years of age. Any country, you would see that if you look at the population below age of 40, only 4% of them would have heart disease. Here it is 40%. You go to any hospital, go to any CC, you will see a 32-year-old, 28-year-old person coming with a heart attack. That is one problem we are facing. The other problem we are facing is that because of better health delivery systems, our average age is increasing. It's no longer in 50s, it's 62 or 63 or 64. So we're getting burden from both the sides, burden at the young age, burden at the elderly age. So the mass of people which is going on increasing. And we have diabetes, I already told you. So we have this problem. And a significant number of these people come for treatment with serious problems like unstable angina, that means chest pain occurring at rest, with a heart attack, myocardial infarction. And the state-of-art treatment for them is as early as possible, you open the artery. Even if you open the artery in an acute heart attack by giving a intravenous drug like streptokinase or tenecteplase, most of them do not get complete patency. All of them should be going to a cath lab. That's the recommendation now. If you cannot go to a cath lab in the first few hours, get a thrombolytic therapy done, go to the nearest hospital within 12 hours and get an angiogram done, indicating that a very large number of our patients get into angiography followed by either angioplasty or bypass surgery. You also know that the pace of bypass surgery is not keeping up with the pace of angioplasty. Angioplasty is taking over. Numbers, many more angioplasty is done as compared to bypass surgery. Bypass surgery figures are very static or coming down all over the world. In fact, in India, still bypass surgery is continuing at some pace, competing against angioplasty because, interestingly, bypass surgery is cheaper than angioplasty in India. Whereas anywhere else in the world, bypass surgery is much more costly because it means 4 days, 7 days, 8 days hospital stay. And hospital stay in our country is not as expensive. Whereas, putting in a stent is more expensive. One stent costs an average, even if it is a low cost, in 65 to 70,000 rupees. So if you have to put in 2-3 stents, it becomes more than 2 lakhs. And bypass surgery can be done, even if you have to put in 4 grafts, 5 grafts, the cost is the same. 1,75,000 rupees. So that is the economics which prevails here. And as you can see from this, that coronary interventions, that means angioplasties, are increasing every year by about 25 to 30%. It will go on increasing, and this increase is much more than in the West, because in the West they have the centers and most of the people have facilities to go. Here the facilities are increasing now. You would see that 20 years ago there were 2 cath labs or 3 cath labs in the city of Delhi. Today I think we have 50 or 55 cath labs in the city of Delhi. So with the result that more we can't keep it out. Tomorrow, every month there's a new cath lab somewhere. So that's good, so that people have an access to a place. And as I told you, the most gratifying angioplasty is in a setting of acute heart attack, where you can save lives, where you can reduce the chance of patient becoming a cripple because of heart failure, because if you treat in time, his heart function will remain nearly normal or at least 40-45% ejection fraction, whereas if you don't treat in time, his ejection fraction becomes 20%, he can't walk a step, and he becomes a burden on the community. So you see that numbers are increasing, and as you can see that single vessel disease, multi-vessel disease, all is increasing. As you can see that 1/3 of the procedures, even in this registry, were for multi-vessel disease, because traditionally angioplasty, when it started 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it used to be meant for one vessel or one focal region so that you can fix it. But today, very complex patients can be handled by angioplasty because of better techniques, operator experience has increased, and the stents which have come are much more predictable. You must have heard of drug-eluting stents, where the recurrence chances becomes much lower. So that's why it is becoming more and more accepted, because it is a non-surgical method. The patient goes home the next day. We should also know that angiogram is not the gold standard for diagnosing physiology of coronary artery disease. What you see here, like you see here, a very significant blockage of the artery. Well, this is significant. By any method, this is a very tight stenosis, would need a treatment. But in addition, you would see there are many other blocks, like here. There is a narrowing which somebody would label as 30%. Here is a narrowing which somebody would label as 50-60%. And now it's called oculostenotic reflex. If he goes to a hospital which is trying to make even, and the doctor who has joined that hospital, interventional cardiologist, when he joined a corporate hospital or any other hospital, he is asked, how many cases will you do in a month, average? He says, I think I'm so good and so popular, I'll do at least 50 angioplasties. Well, first month passes, he's able to do 10, it's a new hospital. Next month passes, he can do 7. Third month, aggressive marketing starts, he's able to do 20, but nowhere close to 50. So that the administration starts showing him indirectly, people are very diplomatic. They would remove his chair from that big room and tell him that, somebody else will also sit here. So what he starts doing is that it's not his fault. When a lesion he sees, even 50% lesion to him appears, oh, this is significant. Let us put in a sign. Well, these are anecdotes, but I can tell you they are little more than anecdotes, which is happening all over the world actually, because of the pressure of keeping numbers, and you lose to, try to lose contact with the patient. You look at the artery, you look at your target, like any corporate house. So, as I was telling you, that coronary angiogram just detects some arteries. It doesn't show you the flow. It doesn't tell you which portion of the heart is receiving less blood supply and which is receiving normal blood supply, which is extremely important. If in presence of a blockage, the blood supply to that vessel, from that vessel is normal, even with stress, that means that blockage is not producing any deleterious effect. So that blockage does not need anything, neither a bypass graft nor a stent. So that angiogram tells you the anatomy, just narrowing. There are other methods like a stress thallium. You must have heard of a stress thallium or stress echo, which to some extent are very good. But which particular artery is really responsible for ischemia and which branch is not? That is difficult to find out. And there comes the method which I am going to talk about. I'll try to be as simple as possible, called fractional flow reserve. This is a method by which you can actually, in the cath lab, after doing an angiogram, before deciding which artery is producing the problem and needs to be reconstructed and which artery does not. It's very simple. It is, by definition, fractional flow reserve by definition is maximum flow down a vessel in presence of a narrowing. Obviously, if there is a 70% narrowing or 80% narrowing, at rest, even in any person, the blood flow is sufficient. Patient person doesn't get any angina. It is only when he runs, when he climbs upstairs, that 60 or 70% cannot increase the blood flow to the extent it should, and there is ischemia. So that is what this method is going to do, is that it will tell you the fractional flow reserve when the vessels are fully dilated, and that can be done by injecting certain important potent vasodilators like adenosine. Adenosine, as you know, is a drug. If you inject, all the vessels dilate. And this is a wire. And actually, the measuring this, evaluating this is stupidly simple. It's extremely simple. Basically, this is the wire which is passed in across the lesion, and this wire near the tip, as you can see, these 3 wires, red, green and yellow, over a sensor element. So it just detects the pressure from here and gives it on the scope, and this is what is done. Now this is a coronary angiogram. Now the wire is first you passed in. The pressure is recorded from the healthy portion of the artery. So healthy portion of the artery, you measure the pressure through this catheter here and through the wire here. They are equal, absolutely equal. So the normal FFR will be 1 because the pressures are equal. Then you can see this narrowing. This is the narrowing. And now you push this wire distal to the narrowing. And this is the pressure transducer which I showed you in in the other slide, this slide. This is the sensor. So now you record the pressure, and you will see the pressure here is significantly lower. This is blue. Before it was pushed through, it was same. It was 1. Pressure from the guiding catheter, pressure from the wire is same. But when the severe lesion has been crossed, the pressure has fallen. And here you don't need to increase the flow because there is already such a difference in the pressure. That would mean that this obstruction is clearly flow limiting. Any flow limiting obstruction is going to be deleterious. That means that portion of the heart is receiving much less blood supply than it should be. So now this is saying that FFR 0.71, and when you push in the wire, inject adenosine, this kind of a tracing comes on the scope, and you see it gives a value of 0.71. That means that fractional flow reserve is 71% of normal. That means during conditions of maximum hyperemia, when you have injected the drug with maximum flow, the heart is receiving only 71% of the blood supply in comparison to 100. And it has been worked out that if it is less than 0.75, it is significant. That means it is significant to produce a problem to that heart. And if it is more than 0.80, it is absolutely not significant. Between 0.75 and 0.80, there is a gray zone. So that is the reason we take this 0.75 as 0.8, so that that gray zone is avoided. And if you do the FFR of a vessel, as I told you, it's very simple. You push in the wire and get the ratio. If it is less than 0.80, it means it is significant. And if it is more than 0.80, it is not significant. Basically, that means the lesion is mild. And mild lesion does not require an angioplasty. Tomorrow you might say, well, this mild lesion may progress in years to come. This 60% may become 90%. So why don't you fix it now? This has been studied very well, that mild lesions require very aggressive medical treatment. They require statins, they require ACE inhibitors, they require aspirin, which all patients should be having in good dosage. And it has been seen that up to 2 to 3 years now, these patients have been restudied, and that 0.80 and above remains 0.80 and above. 0.2% of the patients get into problems. 99.8% of patients do not get into a problem. So that means at that point of time, you do not need to treat that particular lesion. And this is a very important study, in fact, a sort of a legendary study in this science, called the FAME study, in which what was done is that patients were taken up on the basis of angiography, and it was decided that half the patients would be subjected to angioplasty based upon the angiographic narrowing. Anything more than 50 to 60% stent. Other half FFR was measured, and only those lesions which were found to be functionally significant, that means FFR more than 0.80, were handled. And see the difference. The difference was that there was, number one, the number of stents which were used was significantly lower. Angio guided required 2.7 stents per patient, whereas FFR guided required 1.9 stent, which is significant. Significant reduction in the cost. This has been calculated in US dollars. For every patient, there was a cost saving of $675. Significant reduction in total cost of the procedure. It's not only the stent, because it is the time spent, it is the dye which is spent, it is the additional hardware. So every patient, there is this cost saving of $2,000. And not only that, at the end of the year, there were fewer deaths, fewer complications in the group of patients who were treated on the basis of functional analysis rather than only anatomical measure. So it was not only more efficacious, but it was also much more cost effective. And there was no significant difference in the procedure time. One might say that it might take hours extra. No, there was no significant difference in the procedure time. And if you see the economics, you would see in 1,000 scenarios, you would see that FFR guided was not only better, for the patient's efficacy, but it was also significantly cost effective. Less number of stents used, and in the West, most of it is covered by the insurance. So there was a big gain for the insurance in terms of money to be reimbursed. Also, there was a big gain in the term of patients doing better. Patients not requiring readmissions for restenosis, because every stent, in spite of having best technology, there's a 3 to 4% chance still of restenosis. So if you put in a stent where it was not required, that particular stent by restenosis would make that milder disease even more significant. So less readmissions, less heart attacks in the 1 year or 2 years, and improved survival. At the same time, lower cost. Now we also did this in our scenario. I thought, if it applies in US, does it apply in India? What we did is that we took 117 consecutive coronary regions in a multi-vessel disease scenario and did fractional flow reserve. And it was found that of these lesions, which are between 50% and 90%, more than 90% lesion, one doesn't have to waste time. We know they are very significant. And this is today in the guidelines of several countries, including the European Union, that you cannot intervene in a lesion. You will not be reimbursed by the insurance company if the lesion is between 50 to 90 and you have not shown that the FFR is less than 0.8. You will not be reimbursed. So we also did the same, and we find that 70% of these lesions between 50 and 90 had an FFR more than 0.80. That means they did not require an intervention, and it was only 30% of the lesions, 35 lesions, where that FFR was less than 0.80. Now you look at the cost-effective analysis. First we had done that any lesion between 50 and 90, in our projection, that if we had stented all the lesions between 50% and 90%, out of these 111 lesions, what would have come is that only 30 were found to be ischemic. We also take into consideration that FFR wire also costs. Corporate hospital will make money out of FFR also. So give the cost of 30,000. Wire doesn't cost 30,000, but everything, okay, 30,000 rupees for FFR. Taking that into consideration, there was a saving of 50.7 lakh of rupees. If you had stented all the lesions between 50 and 90. Now somebody would say, well, 50 to 70 I wouldn't have stented. I would have stented only 70 to 90. If you take that, that would mean that you would have still stented, only 17 lesions were found to be ischemic out of 39. It means that 22 lesions were not considered for angioplasty. And the average cost here would be now, average saving would be 12 lakh. Still 12 lakh of rupees, even if you had not stented 50 to 70, but stented 70 to 90. 70 to 90, most people, when you go to the patient also telling them, patient these days asks you, they didn't ask you how is the patient, कितने % blockage है, 70 है, 80 है, हाँ जी कर दो. So out of those 70 to 90 also, there is a significant number who do not require it. So I'll show you some case illustration just to explain my point. Now this is a lady who actually is a secretary in one of the central government. She had a heart attack 2 years ago. Her right coronary artery was normal, and her left anterior descending upper one was totally blocked, and this did not require, because that portion of the heart was totally not viable. Now you see there is a branch here in the lower panel. You don't have a pointer, but you can see it, which appears to be narrow. Do you have a pointer? Mouse से वो हिल जाता है, goes haywire. Okay, yeah. So there appears to be, I'll show you because it's so important to show you. See here there is an arrow. And by eyeballing, since I do angioplasty at night during my sleep, this looks like that this is, it's not a mild lesion. We do an FFR. FFR is 0.97, indicating that absolutely not at all flow limiting. So nothing done. Other patient. Here there is a suspicion of a left main disease, and left main disease is considered to be a widowmaker disease, very serious. It must go for the procedure. Although these days some of these are going for angioplasty, but most of them go for surgery. Now here there is a left main, but there was a doubt because the patient's symptoms and other things were not correlating. So we did an FFR, and the FFR is 0.91. So one major surgery avoided because the flow is absolutely normal. And if the flow is absolutely normal, if you put in grafts to these arteries, those grafts are going to get blocked because there is competitive flow. There is a normal flow, you put in one more, conduit to increase the flow, one of them is going to close down. Either the native disease becomes more and closes off, or the graft gets blocked. So right also has a similar thing, FFR is normal. Now this is interesting. Now this particular patient has a disease of two arteries. One of them is diagonal, which is the last example I'm showing. An artery here is showing narrowing. In fact, this narrowing to the naked eye appears possibly significant. And his other artery, and he had come with unstable angina. His other artery, the right coronary artery, shows something in the beginning, just at the tip of the catheter near the bend, which appears not so significant as that. Now see the FFR. FFR, the diagonal artery, which appeared more significant, is 0.90, which is normal. And the FFR of the proximal right coronary artery, which appeared borderline, is 0.79, is significant. So he underwent an angioplasty of the right, and FFR not only tells you that it's required, after angioplasty and stenting, you measure it again, it normalizes. If it has not normalized, that means you have not done your complete job. And here, after putting in a stent, FFR has become 0.94, which is excellent. So friends, I would tell you that the value of FFR is immense, especially in all the centers which are doing invasive procedures. We know the limitations of angiography. I showed you 3 examples. I've got lots and lots of examples. There is a discrepancy between what you see in the angiogram, morphology, and the physiology. And that is, and non-invasive investigations like stress therapy have some limitations because they will tell you the area of ischemia. They will tell you per vessel. Suppose there is inferior ischemia. Inferior ischemia, right artery also supplies, circumflex also supplies, circumflex has 2 branches. So which one to do? So this is the method which will tell you. And the potential downside to indiscriminate drug-eluting stent use, because there is a feeling that there is an indiscriminate use of stents because of many factors. Industry-driven, or whatever-driven, target-driven, oculostenotic reflex. These are human nature. But there has to be some method which can scientifically tell you, well, this is required, this is not required. So measuring FFR can be a useful technique in this setting. Thank you very much. And these are the guidelines of the European Society that FFR has to be done if the lesion is between 50 and 90. Otherwise you don't get it. You pay yourself. Thank you, Dr. Kaur.